The only thing that resonates with people online is a little bit of a story. Usually the only narrative you go to is like, I know, what about this sucks? There's this gullible side of me that I nurture that is able to enjoy the show and the narrative, however crazy it may be. And then the other side of me simultaneously is like, well, clearly that they staged. It's like these two tracks happening at the same time.
I mean, I understand that when you do something, you have a sense of why you're doing it and that it's a benevolent thing. Have you ever regretted debunking something? I want to talk about the future and the less obvious, because deep fakes are getting pretty good. What is your job going to be like down the line? Conrad 500 wants to know whether you call yourself Captain D in the bedroom.
Well, of course. I mean, why do you think I named the whole sub-series Quick D?
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. We are live on Discord because it is TCU night, Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. I am Kevin Lieber. We are with our patrons in the Patreon-only episode chat, and we are being bombarded with lurkers because of today's guest. Real quick, before I get to you, Matt, I want to give a shout-out to Nathan Barnett, who was just on America's Got Talent as his Keith Apicary character, which is crazy.
I was going to say, no, he wasn't. I didn't see Nathan Barnett on that show. I saw Keith Apicary. Completely different. Completely different man.
Yes, totally different. And we do have some updates for our community about some t-shirts. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the Keith Apicary America's Got Talent video, you need to watch it. It was trending on YouTube yesterday, so it's not like it's hard to find. But the update we wanted to do is about t-shirts. Kevin's been working a lot on this, and we wanted to do 3 things with shirts for the Create Unknown. And the first one was to work with really talented artists to get good designs. Kevin's been doing that for a couple months now. The second was to have a very high quality product. We went with tri-blend shirts that are just incredibly soft. So like that favorite shirt that you have in the closet, the one that you've been wearing for like 19 years. Yeah, it'll feel like that. And the third thing was to make it exclusive to the community. So we first and foremost wanted shirts for our guests and the baby gang, the infantry. Like that whole group of people, guests and those supporters, drive this show. And we wanted other patrons to have a hefty discount and keep it real exclusive. So there will be some available for sale for other people, but we didn't order 10,000 of these. We wanted to keep it tight,
not a ton,
very exclusive,
not a lot.
So you got to be quick. Is what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Like we know these are gonna sell out pretty fast, and that's cool. Everybody's gonna have the same shirts as your favorite Create Unknown guest and your most loathed baby gang member.
Yes. And we have, speaking of guests, we have Alan Pan coming up next week. But for now, let's get in immediately, without further delay, to our current amazing guest.
Yeah, the following here is nuts, and it's somebody who we've wanted to and tried to get on this podcast for something like 9 months. It finally worked out. But in 1962, Soviet cosmonaut German Titov said that in space he saw neither angels nor God. You may have seen the famous poster of a smiling Titov with the caption "Baganyet," proclaiming there is no God, but for all the Soviet Union's propaganda against the existence of a deity, they managed to create one themselves. Harry Houdini exposed how psychic mediums tricked grieving widows, and Penn and Teller have a series called Bullshit that challenges just about everything you thought you knew. But the one true god of modern debunking is Captain Disillusion, who has spent 13 years debunking visual effects-fueled viral videos by not only surgically and scientifically detailing why a video is fake, but demonstrating exactly how the fakers pulled it off. Captain Disillusion's channel began by debunking a clip of one penguin slapping the hell out of another one, and has most recently featured a 41-minute dissection of the 1986 Disney classic Flight of the Navigator. Along the way, he's become one of the most visibly recognizable personalities on YouTube, as he's known for having the lower half of his face painted like a futuristic Tin Man. But sometimes he is just Alan Melekjanian, the Latvian-born son of a Russian medical student who left her training to join an Armenian circus performer and marry him, with the pair traveling across the Soviet Union, performing together with the circus, including after having Alan in 1980. It was a very bad year for Soviet ice hockey and a very good year for YouTube. And they did this throughout his childhood until the family's 1992 exodus to the United States. In VFX Cool, a series that is part deep dive and part love letter to the movie magic that in some ways hasn't changed much from George Méliès's flying a rocket into the moon's eye in 1902. Alan lays bare his searing hot passion for visual effects and both the psychological and artistic value of the medium. Through all of this, Alan has educated and inspired literally millions of creatives worldwide. But it's not all amazing, as Alan explained in his Skepticon talk called The Unbearable Loneliness of Being Right on the Internet. So, Alan, what is the absolute worst part of knowing the truth about how everything actually works?
Oh my gosh. First, let me take a second to recover from that epic intro. And now, okay. I regressed for a second. I was going to start speaking Russian, but sorry. Can I hear that question again?
Yeah. Well, you have this TED Talkish kind of thing, but it was at Skepticon in Australia in 2017.
Yeah.
Unbearable loneliness of being right on the internet. So you look at things and you know the truth behind them. There is no illusion for you. How is that rough?
I mean, I don't see the world that way, really. You know, I enjoy breaking things down, but I don't what you see of my videos on the internet is just like a guy who can figure everything out in a snap and explain it to you. But I don't actually experience the world that way. So I kind of I'm just as perplexed by things I see, and I don't know what's right or wrong, what's true or not until I start looking into it. So for me, it's a journey just like for everyone else. So it's all, even just my presentation of it and my vibe on YouTube is an illusion in itself, I guess you could say, guys.
Yeah. I always just wondered, and I suppose you answered it, but if you're just sitting there seeing these viral clips that you know are fake and just grumbling, just be like, oh my God, obviously this is fake. How are people falling for this? All right, now I have to explain it.
Yeah, it kind of started out that way back then. Like when I started the YouTube channel, there was a lot of that kind of stuff, or at least it seemed like people were more gullible, or that's just the way they like to talk on the internet, that everything is funny and crazy, and is that real? Now everybody's much more cynical. So I don't know if I made everyone cynical over the years, or it's just the zeitgeist of everyone on the internet got a little more skeptical, naturally, because there's so much fake stuff. Mm-hmm. But it used to be very easy. It used to be, in a way, that's why the tone of my character and the channel started out the way it did, is because everyone did seem kind of gullible, and it was it made me, when I see a new viral video that I instantly see as fake, it makes me roll my eyes, and I can explain it to you in 10 different ways. Let me pick the most funny and weird way to do it. But now I end up scratching my head as like everyone else with a lot of stuff, and it just comes down to working on it. Okay, let me fall back on my experience. Let me ask some people that know about this particular kind of fake thing. Let me analyze the video, and then I go back and present it as if this is a piece of cake. Of course it's fake. What are you guys talking about?
Right. I really want to get into the Flight of the Navigator episode, but I want to pick up on this cynicism idea, I would love both of your takes on this, because I have this feeling that, and not just as it relates to debunking viral videos, but just everything in general. And I feel like it has gotten so much worse over the last year. I don't know if it's just because of people being cooped up and the coronavirus and all that stuff, but I feel as though there's like this palpable cynicism just seeping into everything, no matter what it is. Like, for instance, we're working on a new Vsauce 2 video that's going to involve all stacks of pennies. So
many pennies.
Stacks and
thousands
stacks.
of pennies.
Literally thousands of pennies. Okay, that's what is in the works on the Vsauce 2 side. So I go to the bank today, and I buy $25 worth of pennies, which it turns out can be are like given to you in what looks like a brick. It's this huge box just filled with these penny rolls. It's extremely heavy. It's very strange looking. So, and I had no idea. I had never bought $25 worth of penny rolls before, and was a little shocked to see like the delivery mechanism of them. So I posted a picture of it on Twitter just with the caption "penny brick" because I thought it was funny. And
penny brick is funny.
Yeah, penny brick. Like, who knew?
You could name a band Penny Brick and everybody would be like, oh, that's a cool band name.
I think so. Yeah, it'd be like a good ska band or something.
Yeah. Anybody listening, if you need a name for your band, take Penny Brick and just put us in the liner notes of the album.
Oh, God. I'm just thinking about throwing the penny brick now and having the pennies just explode everywhere. It would be really satisfying, but not fun to clean up. Anyway, within 5 minutes, I received this long reply about the uselessness of pennies, a very serious reply about the uselessness of pennies, and the tone of which was almost like accusatory of me for having this penny brick. And here I am having to spend not a long time, but a few minutes digesting this reply and crafting one of my own to explain, like, look, I got this penny brick in order to demonstrate something on Vsauce 2. Once I'm finished with the penny brick, I will then return it to the bank. Why am I having to explain why I have $25 worth of pennies as if I have done something awful? That's how it felt. Like I've made a mistake by getting pennies. I'm like, I didn't. What? Why is this controversial? Why is everything controversial? I don't get it.
I think it's because people, like, the only thing that people or the only thing that resonates with people online is a little bit of a story, a little bit of a narrative. And so usually the only narrative you go to is like, I know, what about this sucks? Or what about this is not as nice as you think? So I think that's why that ends up happening. I constantly experience this too. Like, I think I tweeted yesterday something about like The Simpsons, how come I noticed that in like the remake of The Simpsons intro, like Marge doesn't like react to Maggie being thrown in the cart, in the shopping cart. And I was like, it's curious.
Smile,
I wonder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the animation like thinking behind it? That must be a technical reason. But all it was is just like a litany of like, because lazy animators, because the animation was cheap, and they're relying on all the like rigging techniques and computer animation, and it's all gone to hell. Like that's kind of what everybody's motivated to like contribute to the discussion. And I'm like, I just in my head I'm thinking, I just wanted to like figure out the actual technical reason, and I kind of figured it out for myself. But I feel like it's just the go-to thing. Like,
why though?
Yeah,
why? Because it's really awesome not to know things. Like, it's really cool to know things. But think of somebody like Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was a nice man. Forrest Gump was not a rocket scientist. He was a hell of a happy guy. He knew things on a certain level. He had a different take than most people would have. But he really enjoyed himself. Life was pretty good. What's wrong with that? Why do people gravitate toward tearing things apart and getting to the insides and knowing for sure what it is and kind of generally being miserable about it a lot of the time, when they could just kind of smile and be Forrest Gump?
Yeah, I guess we'd all like to be Forrest Gump. I mean, but I think we're like pattern connecting, dot connecting creatures. We need to figure out patterns, and I think it's just natural to kind of like think. You know, when you're like growing up, when you're a teenager, you start to feel like I figured it all out. Everything sucks or whatever, because you're starting to understand that there's a little more to things than meets the eye. But you're just connecting dots randomly, and everything seems like a conspiracy. But some people just never. I feel like you're supposed to hit a stage where you're like, well, what I've learned about myself is that there's always something I don't know, so I better be a little more open about it and kind of take in information and update my conclusions. But some people get stuck, or I'd say most people get stuck in that mode, in that sort of teenage mode, where all they know is the moment they figure an inkling of something out, that's the way the world is, and that's it. And it's hard to update after that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I think.
Yeah, I see that. I totally feel that. I think the difference, Matt, between kind of like Forrest Gump's outlook, and I don't know why we're using Forrest Gump as an example, but Forrest Gump's outlook and you know, Captain Disillusion's outlook, and I would also say that, you know, the Vsauce outlook is also very similar to Captain Disillusion's, is finding the joy and the excitement in not knowing. Like finding, like being happy about being curious rather than being almost resentful of having information. Like I guess that's like the weird part to me. It's like, why are people mad that they know things?
Yeah.
It's an odd attitude to be pissed off that you know something. Seems weird.
I have an example of being pissed off that I know things. Okay. All right. It's a good fit for this. So I know somebody very well who was on reality TV. They worked on shows, including our professional peer, John Taffer's Bar Rescue. John's show is also on Studio 71's network. So they started to tell me when I would watch stuff on reality TV, oh, that's fake. That was staged. This was predetermined. This competition was, including, you know, specific knowledge of the episode we were watching, saying, no, this is what really happened. And they decided to do XYZ instead. That sucked. That has ruined so much reality TV for me. Shows like Bar Rescue, you know, like the raccoon, you know, shows up in the bar and like, oh my God, we've got raccoons. Well, you know, that may not have been spontaneous. It kills the joy of watching the show. And the fact that I know how a lot of it works now makes me less interested. It's cool to know it. Like, I'm glad on one level that I know it, but I like watching the shows less. And I kind of wish I was still supremely ignorant about those things.
How the sausage is made makes you not want to eat the sausage.
Yeah, but you mentioned Vsauce with this, and I'm glad that you did, because this is the Monty Hall situation. Would you rather know how the Monty Hall paradox works, or would you rather watch Let's Make a Deal and just plain enjoy the anticipation of whether they're getting a car or a goat behind the door? Mm-hmm. You know, it's... I mean, can you do both? Alan, can you do both? Can somebody balance those two? I was going to say, when you were describing the reality show thing, I kind of have a similar thing, because I have friends that work in reality, and I just kind of like, you know, like certain shows, and also because I deal with production and kind of know like how that stuff works. I find that I like split my brain. Rather than what you're describing, I kind of have like, there's this gullible side of me that I nurture, that I enjoy, that is able to enjoy the show and the narrative, however crazy it may be. And then the other side of me simultaneously is like, well, clearly that they staged, or here it's a little bit embellished, or I see the way that they edited that to make that person seem a little bit more psycho than they probably were. And it's like these two tracks happening at the same time. I don't know if like that's rare, or it's just some people do it that way and some don't. But I find Can you turn one off?
I feel like,
can you
because
like adjust the volume on the two tracks.
I think I can, but I mean, in a way, aren't we all doing that when we just watch normal narrative stuff? Like if you're watching a movie, you know that didn't really happen. You know, Forrest Gump is, you know, just a talented actor, like at the peak of his career, and you know how they did all the effects from the behind the scenes stuff, but it somehow works. So I think it's possible to tap into that in other situations like reality. But I was also thinking the way that I deal with that, or the closest I come to dealing with that in like Captain Disillusion videos, is when I do a topic that's based on like a magician's actual illusion, like some kind of stage trick or something, which I typically don't do because it's just not fun and it's kind of weird to just reveal someone's, trade secret. But at times when the magician or, whoever did it was presenting it as like a real thing, that's when I feel it's fair game. But people always get a little touchy. Like I hear from people who are into magic or just magicians, like they get a little bit, defensive. Like you shouldn't reveal that method, even though it's like a 300-year-old technique that they did in traveling circus days. Like they're very defensive or protective of that. I think that is sometimes appropriate. Like if it's just a cool bit of technology or entertainment, like some kind of mystery that's just used for entertainment, it's good to keep that a mystery and keep the magic alive. But if it's being presented as real or used for some kind of like shady purpose to fool people out of their money or whatnot, then it's fair game. I kind of switched topics. Sorry.
No, but they're all related though. You think you're talking about keeping the magic alive, and I'm thinking like, what if you never found out that Grandpa didn't really steal your nose when you were 3?
Right. The world would be kind of challenging.
So it's definitely good to understand at a certain point in your development that
quarters don't actually come out of your ears.
Right.
No, but bricks of pennies do. That's why Kevin got the bricks of pennies, so he could go pull 3,000 pennies out of child's ears.
Practice makes perfect.
But how do you find out what that point is? When like on things like viral videos and video effects, at what point should you start to know? I look at it to know. Try to know.
Yeah, I look at it as in the context, because you could look at it this way. There are fewer fake techniques and like fewer explanations than there are videos. A lot of videos are like, this was a split screen or something, but the context of it is very different. So it really only depends on, is this video trying to, sell you something? Like, is it a Kickstarter for a product that demonstrably doesn't work? Because then I feel like it's worth debunking that, because you don't want people to waste their money or something, or it's just good to arm the audience for the future when they encounter a similar kind of thing, and they can just make those decisions for themselves. But if it's just somebody like showing you a fun little trick and it's just a piece of entertainment, then obviously you can take the cue from the creator. If they're being real mysterious about it and they're trying to play the game of keep people guessing, then I don't want to be the killjoy that just explains it. Or I might present it as like, well, this is my take on it. Prove me wrong. Something like that.
It seems like the distinction that you're drawing is really similar to what I understand was Houdini's distinction, 100 years ago or whatever, when he was going out of his way and going kind of bananas over debunking mediums. It seemed like he was really upset that these people were claiming to speak with the dead, and for money, to take advantage of people who are grieving. It sounds like the same thing with you. Is that the line? Is that the line is like, if people are taking advantage of others with these techniques, then they need to be called out. And if it's all, fun and entertainment and no one's being, dragged along, then, let it be.
Basically, that's kind of the very clear line for like modern like skepticism movement. It's like, Houdini back in the day, or in our times, James Randi, kind of was the same figure, doing that kind of thing, doing those kind of stunts, literally fooling both scientists and like just regular people with like doing basically creating the myth of a real psychic personality and presenting it, and people falling for it, and then revealing that that's not a real guy, or the person doesn't have powers, or just proving on different shows that like this guy can't really move stuff with his mind, etc. I think it's just like preventing exploitation, like that kind of thing is easy. It's very easy to see where that line is. But I feel like in today's world with viral videos, it can be a little bit blurry. Like you can start to argue about it a little bit, like what I was describing earlier. Like, is this a piece of entertainment, or is it a piece of entertainment that's good on its own, but also there's an agenda behind it? Like that's stuff you can sort of take on a case by case basis, and also sometimes, like I've had, I feel like some of my videos have covered topics that are like someone made a thing that was fake for entertainment, but the way that it was received ended up having an impact that was like, a lot more people believe in this or that. That's, that can be harmful or something. Like people use that video as an example, of UFOs or whatever it may be. Like they did it there. The creator's intention was to do a cool little fake thing, but then it ends up as just another piece of evidence for whoever wants to believe in whatever thing they made. So it's like, well, they didn't intend it to be negative, but it has a negative effect. And then I think it's worth explaining that that's not real and why. So it can be a little tricky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like judgment is involved in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that when you do something, you have a sense of why you're doing it and that it's a benevolent thing. Have you ever regretted debunking something and thought, I should have left that alone?
No, I don't think I've ever regretted debunking something, like on the whole, but I feel like there's definitely over the years, like I've adjusted my tone or my takes on certain aspects of something, like maybe some of the things I wouldn't present as negatively, or maybe like there are, when you make a YouTube video that's basically a persuasive essay, you kind of need to gather lots of sort of paragraphs of like supporting ideas, right? Like this, you shouldn't believe this because of this, and this. And I would say like, well, sometimes I throw in like one or two that don't really stand up to scrutiny or something, because in like being zealous to try to have like a strong case and a compelling video, stuff like that. But I don't think I'm trying to think back through my videos, of which I always have a hazy memory because I kind of like stopped looking at a thing I made like a couple of weeks after I released it, and I never really want to revisit it because I feel like it's like I've grown past it and I wish I could do it better, that kind of thing. I'm sure that's a lot of YouTubers' mentality. But yeah, like I don't think I can't recall anything where I just wish that video didn't exist. I wish I didn't make that. But definitely I'd tweak a lot of things about videos, especially the older they are, obviously.
I think that's a totally natural feeling I know I feel that way about a video.
Sure.
Dude, you put a video out, and then as soon as it's live, 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh man, like I wish I could make this unlive so I could fix this one part or the way that I pronounced this, or, add an insert shot here. That's just really inevitable. And especially with the work that you do, it seems so intricate, and there are so many elements to it that the more elements there are, the more things you pick up on that you could have done better. So I totally get that. And I do want to get to the VFX video, but I'm finding this debunking stuff just so fascinating. What is an example of something that you would say was the most egregious thing that you came across that was like snake oily, that you felt like, whoa, like,
yeah,
I need to say something about this?
I suppose, I mean, when my earliest videos were more about like easy targets, like, oh, there's this ghost sighting or this UFO thing or whatever, and like they are always worth debunking or at least examining to say like this is explainable or whatever, so that people can be a little more critical minded. But that's easy, and that's not. It's like there are a million videos debunking those kinds of things. But in more, I guess, recent era, I did this video on like a product that's like, it's called the Secret Bracelet, and it was this wrist wearable device that purported to have like a super perfect projector that would project, a display onto your forearm, and they had this sort of product like a what do you call that? Just a not proof of concept, but like a demo sort of aspirational video that all it was is a video, really, that became big, that went viral, and it seemed like they formed a company around that to actually try to make this product. But there are so many things about it that were so obviously like impossible, basically, that the more seriously they were presenting this sort of Kickstarter type thing, and the more I felt like this can't be. I mean, either this is some brilliant tech that is just out of this world breakthrough, or they're full of it, and it would be really. I mean, I thought of it at the time as like it would be fun. It seems like not that difficult to visualize some of these things and some of the flaws in their ideas. But as I was working on that video and kind of following this particular project, it seemed like, gosh, they're really focused on trying to finance this endeavor that they have to know won't work the way that they explain, And sure enough, as this sort of their reports of their development came out, video after video, post after post, it kind of seemed like, well, they're not really making a lot of progress, and what they're making is becoming less and less impressive and more just like somebody strapping a portable projector to their arm to project a super faint, distorted piece of video.
I know that's what I've always wanted all my life.
Yeah, because of course, even the concept, even if you could do that in the way that initial video shows, that would be just so great, because I always wanted, that the best display is a curved, tan, hairy surface. That's what we all dream of. So I don't know. I guess I'm proving myself wrong, because I found that project, that video and that debunking of a thing that is presented as true fun, but I feel like it was kind of worth it, like because that never came to fruition, and people clearly, my video did really well, and people to this day ask, because I kind of ended it by saying, I kind of like threw in some money just to make sure that if that ever came out, I got my hands on it so I can do a follow-up and really examine the product in hand, like do a product review. People ask about it to this day, and it's been years since that came out. So I think it made a difference, and I think, whenever people come across it, even today, it's like that product is not something, they're gonna buy. Although people send me links sometimes to some kind of shady like places where they're supposedly selling something like this. But maybe when they see my video, they'll have that outlook on something similar that they encounter. So maybe it was like, dare I say, educational in some way for them. So I think that's an example. Maybe it wasn't so egregious, but it was a clear-cut line where I think it was worth doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like content cop for products, for fake products.
Yeah, I was thinking, that's exactly what I was going to say, is how amazing would it be to pair iDubbbz with Captain Disillusion to go through Kickstarter crap.
Oh, right.
Because there's so much stuff, as you're talking about having these prototypes, some of which are really well-made concepts that are still digital. They haven't even been manufactured yet.
Right.
On sites like Kickstarter, where people do have an idea and they raise a tremendous amount of money for it, and they often deliver. Most of the time they do. Occasionally, though, they don't. And somebody coming along in that little seed round who says, this, mechanically, this is not actually going to work, or it's certainly not going to happen on the timetable you've laid out.
Right. Yeah, I suppose.
It seems like it would take an endless amount of work, though. I
mean, yes, that for that reason, and as well as, I don't know if it would be, I guess I don't want to say appropriate, but I don't know how fun it would be to sort of make pseudo entertainment out of that, because like I think it's a useful service, but I think it should be like, if such a thing existed, and it should just be like an informative website, like a Snopes kind of thing, where they're not like calling it out necessarily. Because I did, I get something out of the fact that I debunk something. I do try to make it entertaining, and it is like a thing on its own. And so that's why I also try to choose carefully the subject, because I don't want to do it at someone's expense in a way that like maybe they didn't fully deserve. And if you're doing like your takes on like, is this product viable or whatever, I'm sure that after doing that for a while, you'll get some that will prove you wrong. And at that point, it's kind of weird that it sounds like you tried to take them down and they proved themselves viable after all. So yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's definitely useful to the most like obvious examples, because there are really people that are really talented at presenting their ideas, right? Like at pitching the world and crowdfunders. But like if you think about it for more than like 5 minutes, you realize like this is a non-starter. And I think that those kind of things should definitely have there should be a little primer somewhere, a little directory you can reference to just like do that as your first check. Should I invest in this?
Well, that's a big skill though. Like, visionary type people, like they often have to convince investors or the public that their thing is cooler than it is until it's actually that cool. Right. And I wonder about what the responsibility is. Like, how much should you be allowed to fudge the truth in the service of it actually being true in the end?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think I have a distorted sense for that kind of thing because as you explained my background, I kind of come from like an upbringing that was very, I don't know how to say, like that kind of mentality and that kind of vibe of bigging things up and presenting the best side of everything. And it wasn't a thing in like the Soviet Union. Like, I mean, I guess the government would tell people, this is the way things are, everything's fine. And you believe it, but no one's going to like, there was no incentive to be like, this product is the best product in the world because it's the only version of the product you're going to get anyway. And when people did that kind of thing, I feel like it was frowned upon. So as much as I feel like, I'm not influenced by that, I do sometimes have this adverse reaction to, I do see through pitches and advertisements and things, and I could see which, like, I get what, I just want to know the truth about this, and I can see which part of that is just you putting your best spin on it, and I really don't need that. And I kind of my brain instantly like separates that icing from the main part, So maybe that's why I make the videos that I do. Like, I'm sure that has an influence. I kind of want to separate the fluffy stuff and just get to the point.
Yeah, there's such a fine line between doing that and becoming that guy. You know, it being the actually meme.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have to
because
say
that's exactly what, what's happening there is somebody comes in and says, well, no, this is really what it's like. And that's wildly entertaining and informative, and everybody feels good about it in your videos, or if it, can be in a Twitter thread and everybody hates it, even though it's the same thing. So the balance on that kind of playing with the presentation and the context seems to make all the difference.
Well, and I have to say, like, when just to stick with that bracelet video, when that came out and it did well, I felt very compelled to, like, I rode the high of that, and I was like, what other products can I do? And I found like a thing that was in a similar vein and seemed promising, and I actually started like thinking up a premise around it and how to present it, because I just felt like I got the bug for doing that format of a video. But in that particular case, the more I worked on that, the more it seemed like, well, this is maybe not a viable product. But you know what? Like, it's too difficult to dig into, like, their claims are a little bit exaggerated, but at the same time, they're kind of technically based in a real thing, and they're carefully wording everything that they're explaining in a way that you can't really, like, it would be almost a little bit disingenuous of me to present what they claim in a way that's like even more exaggerated, and then just to debunk it. So I actually gave up on an idea of doing a video like that about another product, just because I was like, I started feeling a little bit like I don't trust myself. Like, I might just experience a little wishful thinking and wanting to take something down a notch because it worked for me previously. So it's a real danger, I think, sometimes. I think it's a danger.
Gut instinct, right? Though, what happened with the product? Was it phony?
I think, to be honest, I didn't really follow it up. I think I looked it up once or twice, and I didn't actually see evidence of it. So it might have been like a project that they kind of that faded away on its own. But in the end, like in addition to why I was just explaining, it also didn't feel like a fun enough story to tell, so like that entertainment aspect of it was a little bit lacking. So there were also other reasons why I kind of abandoned it, but just it is I do try to watch myself for like I know it's important to capitalize on or like see what worked in what you do and try to like emphasize that and follow the things that work and drop things that don't. But I think there's also a danger, especially when you're doing something that in a way like relies on outside content and other people's work to like to be good and effective, that you don't want to slip into being exploitative in some way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I feel as though VFX School is kind of the opposite in tone completely because, man, first of all, let me tell you, I haven't thought about Flight of the Navigator in, when did that movie come out? 1986?
1986.
So I probably haven't thought about that movie since 1991, maybe. It's one of those movies I probably watched 4 dozen times between 1986 and 1991, and then never again since then. So I should revisit it. But it just watching your video brought back a flood of childhood memories because I hadn't thought about that movie in so long. But in Matt's intro, it mentioned VFX School being like a love letter, and I think that's the perfect way to describe at least how I felt that show, and I'll call it a show. That series came across because the amount of effort and passion that went into that, it cannot be rivaled by almost anything that you see on YouTube, television, or otherwise. I was thinking this morning about one of the differentiators between YouTube, one of the major advantages and differentiators between YouTube and traditional television is that on YouTube, you really can follow one person's passion about a topic. And that passion might be taking care of ostriches in your backyard, or it could be, eating old military meals, or it could be one of any weird thing you can possibly imagine. It's on YouTube and somebody's passionate about it. With you, obviously, it's visual effects, movie magic. The only thing I could think of on traditional TV ever, and if either of you guys have another example, like please throw it out there, is Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting. Okay? If anybody doesn't remember Bob Ross, I think that you can watch his episodes on Netflix or Hulu or something.
Yeah, still on.
Yep.
But Bob Ross was literally just a dude painting. Like that, there was no format to that show. There was no crazy action or conflict or drama, or the drama was just seeing the painting finished. And as you watched this guy paint his happy little trees, he had like a lovely way of narrating his work. But for the most part, that show was just a guy liking to paint, and you watched it, and that was it.
It was the original like YouTube painter tutorial. Like that's what he was doing. He was just like, you could do this. All you got to do to make a whole pine tree is just like these little strokes. Just do it like this. And it's super easy. So he was making things approachable. I mean, the trick was, it was enjoyable to just watch, just like a good YouTube video. You could just kind of passively watch it or in the background or stare at it. But it was also, if you're trying to do what he's doing, you'll actually get something out of it, and you might be able to follow along. So that's very addictive, I think.
But it was also like this vicarious feeling of passion that is exuding from the person who's so interested in a thing that you also tangentially become oddly interested in it. Like, let me tell you, man, VFX to me are completely amazing and something that I personally would never want to get into because I see what the work is like. It is gruelingly tedious and slow to me, and it seems so difficult. However, I think it is creating magic, and watching you discuss the different techniques that are used to pull off these magic tricks is fascinating. And your interest in it, it just it pours off of the phone or the laptop or wherever you're watching your videos. And it's something that we never would have gotten without YouTube. And I'm really thankful for that. And I'm, I think it's such a perfect medium for people like you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't difficult or I shouldn't say it wasn't difficult, but the vibe came naturally with this particular video. It just happens to be like this, I don't know, lucky constellation. Like it was this movie. This was one of these few movies that I actually got to see as a kid, because a lot of media, like a lot of this nostalgic media that we, things from the 80s and stuff that everybody shares today in the US, I didn't really get to see it until coming here in the 90s. But that was one of those few things that for some reason was like actually distributed in Eastern Europe and stuff. So I saw that movie in theaters, dubbed in Russian and everything, like this legitimate sort of experience. And I was really affected by it, like a lot of kids, or a lot of people our age at the time. So I did carry that kind of like, I mean, it could very well be like the movie or one of the first movies that sparked that fascination with visual effects in me. So everything that comes across in that episode is just kind of how it really is. But the actual like data behind it and the explanation and how to present it all, that was the hard part and like the grueling part of it, because you could be celebratory. Like there's, it's not hard to do like I could do a 3-hour video about all the cool things I enjoyed as a kid in Flight of the Navigator. But how do I like give you something like you learned something or whatever, like you took something new away from it? That's the unpleasant part that you got to work on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I immediately, first of all, if you haven't seen this video, you have to watch it. You just have to. Jake Roper from Vsauce 3 literally told me about it on the phone. He was like, you have to watch Captain Disillusion's new video. It's so amazing. And it really is. I immediately was like, okay, where's episode 2? Where's episode 3? What other movies can Alan do? Let's think. Okay, The Goonies. I love The Goonies. What can he explain about like The Goonies?
That's the thing. There's like a window of time that about visual effects in movies that is the most fascinating to explain. And I feel like it's this golden age where, I mean, I guess effects have been interesting from the beginning because they were always so challenging. But then you could argue like we got to a point now where everything can just be explained the same way. It all goes in the computer. Everything gets recreated in a virtual world, and then you do whatever you want. It all looks realistic, and you print it back to a final movie. The end. But there's like up to 1998, I feel like it was fascinating there's a lot of fascinating things to explain about all visual effects, and we just have this finite library to to talk about in that way.
Yeah, that's when I stopped watching movies anyway. Peaked in 1990. Right. I'm just kidding. But dude, if you can go from, what would be the beginning of that bracket? Like where computers were starting to get involved, but they weren't very good and they were slow.
Yeah, there was definitely that sort of transition, right? I guess in the late 90s where computer generated images were starting to just be used legitimately, like photorealistic stuff. But the filmmakers thought we're kind of stupid, like the audience is stupid, and they're just gonna everything's gonna look photorealistic from now on. But we were able to perceive that sort of uncanny valley stuff. I guess it's not uncanny valley because we're not even talking about like characters and stuff. Just things that are not real started to look a little more fake because we started to rely on CGI in that sort of loose way, and then took like a little bit of evolution to get more serious about it. So the transition to using computers was rough, but I feel like we're over it now.
I have a question about your transition into using computers on all of this stuff. Kevin and I were talking the other day about how lucky we are being pretty close to the same age as you. We're in the same bracket. Being in this narrow window of having plenty of years pre-internet.
Geriatric Millennials.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what the phrase was. I was trying to think of the phrase as I was waiting to say this. I'm like, I don't remember the phrase, but I know that I hated it.
Mm.
Yeah. Geriatric millennials. That's what the three of us are. And it describes
proud.
like a 5-year window of people who know pre-internet life. They know the beginning of computers not the beginning, but beginning of like household use of computers with very limited capacity. Then all of a sudden you can edit your own photos, and then you've got iMovie level editing and stuff like that. And like now we are where we are, and we've seen it all and been conscious through that. So when did you start in this particular game, and how did that play out?
I think about that exact thing all the time, and I feel like legitimately like thanking my lucky stars to be in this geriatric millennial age and like having experienced.
We're so lucky.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
and like
ridiculously
not to make anyone any younger audience feel bad, but legitimately I think it makes a big difference to like your understanding of the world in a way, because if you think about it, not only did we get to kind of experience all these pre-digital age things, like the world was kind of like the same for a long time. Like there were phones and TVs and stuff for like decades, and the way we came into the world, we were experiencing that sort of lineage of like, that's how you exist. That's how you experience everyday life. And then everything changed all the way to now. And then we went through it every step of the way. And like, I don't know. I think that's different from just like knowing about it, knowing that your parents did that. So, but for me, I feel like it's a little bit enhanced, not to make more of a big deal about being from Soviet Union or anything, but it was a little bit like, things were a little behind. So I actually feel like in a way, like I was born and grew up in the kind of world that felt a little more like the 70s or something in America, and then kind of fast tracked, as I came here, like through more decades in a way. Because we didn't have a remote for our TV and things like that. I didn't do any, like before I came to America, I was just a kid, and I had aspirations to do movies. I kind of was aiming more at just animation than becoming an animator, a classic, cell animator, kind of like that. That's what interested me back, as a kid. And then here I went to film school and all of that, and I did get to use, well, actually before that, I went to this weird high school that had sort of majors and these like these directions you could take with what kind of stuff you can study. And we had like a whole television production studio and this kind of major in it. So I already was doing little short films and little skits and stuff, and we always made the news in our school, like the morning news. I guess a lot of schools did that. So we started, my first introduction to actually using computers for like digital video creation was in high school, where they had things were still done linearly. Like we edited to tape and stuff, and we had a control room where you just like do things live. But we also had a couple of these machines called the video toaster, the NewTek video toaster. And it was these Amiga computers that were kind of a hybrid. They weren't nonlinear editors, but they could control decks, like tape decks, and had like these digital transitions in them. And you could just kind of like pre-program a thing, and then it would like rewind everything and apply the transition and do everything like that. And part of that whole system was this program with this software called Lightwave 3D, which was a whole 3D package that you could start doing computer animation, like 3D rendered computer animation in. So that was like a whole like mind like explosion introduction of this world to me. And I would stay after school like the biggest nerd in the world, watching like VHS tapes that my TV teacher lent me to like get all the little inside tutorials, like just 2-hour long tutorials of a guy sitting in front of a computer in a VHS video telling you like how to do all the things. And just like started being fascinated by that. And while I was in high school, I got the first sort of nonlinear editing things started to appear for consumers. Like you could get like a card, like an expansion card for your PC that would allow you to input video and stuff. It was like brand new kind of thing. Like my school didn't have it, but I bought one at Circuit City or something. And then like we started having a nonlinear, just a computer that actually had Premiere on it and everything like that, all during those 4 years in school. And then same thing repeated in film school, where we like actually cut film on like a little film, editor station. And then we were like doing things digitally. And by the time I was graduating, we were editing stuff in Avid and everything like that. So I guess it was conveniently during my formal education, I kind of experienced a little bit of a pre-digital way of doing things, and got armed for the modern way of doing it.
I want to say something real quick because you mentioned Amiga. We actually talked to a friend of ours, Sean Malone, like a year and a half ago, and he got started. He's the same age as us, and he got started editing on an Amiga as well. There's a documentary, I think it's still on Hulu, called Viva Amiga, and it shows what the Amiga did and how a culture developed around it to the point where some people are still using them. And this computer's like early 90s. But it's a really fantastic demonstration of all the stuff that Alan just talked about. So Viva Amiga, check it out. You'll waste an hour of your time. It'll be awesome.
I want to check that out too. There's something. Sorry.
I was just going to lament to how jealous I am that your school had that stuff in high school.
It's very
it's amazing.
It's fortunate, and
we had nothing.
I remember that one time. I mean, it's lucky, and but like I wonder, because that's the way I got to experience it. I wonder if I'd be like in a different place if I didn't have that. Like, would I? Maybe it would be easier. Maybe if you just skip all that and just come into like in a way, like what's like some of the stuff I describe in the Flight of the Navigator video. Like that's fascinating to know, but is it a problem that I don't know how to do those things? Like I can't make a matte painting, but I can do a digital matte painting now. Like I do the same thing, and it doesn't really affect me that I didn't learn to do it the old school way. I guess it's just more of a perspective in your brain. But it's okay, young people. You don't have to have done all that stuff. You could still have a cool, successful YouTube channel.
I do think it's really fascinating and important that you're documenting it, though, because, it's amazing to know that in order to make those steps, come out of the spaceship, they had to painstakingly mold and then stop motion animate those steps. Whereas, how long would that take to do today in Blender or whatever you would use? I don't know. I'm a moron when it comes to this stuff, but it would take how long compared to making them physically?
Yeah, I have no information how long it took them, but I imagine, I don't even know how you would approach it. Like you'd just have to kind of sketch them, I guess, like in order to create separate sculptures of animation without like the benefit of any kind of digital previs or 3D printing of it. Because they do that kind of thing sometimes now in stop motion animation, like in Leica, like movies, stuff like, feature stop motion films. They'll sometimes 3D print like faces, like the whole animation of a face might be either partially or fully just replacement like faces. And it was just a CG face that they picked all the little, articulation and then printed a bunch of them. You could see that kind of stuff in behind the scenes movies. And in a way, like that's the same thing, except you just did it at the press of a button rather than by hand. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't even know. I don't know how long it would take today. But I don't even know how I would begin to do that today. That's the thing.
It's a lost art. It's like, before I actually mention this, when you were talking about how when we were kids, life had been that way for a really long time. I was thinking about the telephone. Like when I was a kid, and this is going to be a total boomer moment, but when I was a kid, we had a rotary phone. Okay. Mm-hmm. A rotary phone had a dial that you physically had to spin in order to get to a number. So you, first of all, hated anybody with 9s in their phone number because it took forever. Forget like multiple 9s. It was horrible.
I kind of liked it because I liked the little clickety thing. Like I liked when it goes for a long time.
Yeah. Think about you being like in an emergency though. Well, and you're like, oh my God, she's bleeding. But
if they really cared about us, it would be 111, not 911.
But think about how long phones were like that for at that point. It's like the telephone had worked that way for like 90 years. And it hadn't updated. And I remember it finally updated to touch tone, when we were in like, I don't know, middle school or whatever. And then, cordless phones where you could like walk around your house, but don't get like too far from where you have to plug the thing in. But that's crazy. There's no cord attached to the thing. So you're right. There was it was such a weird time where nearly all of the technology, like, what was new? Like CD players were new. Microwaves were kind of new when we were really little.
Yeah, the 80s is when people really decided that they were safe. I mean, it took a long time to convince everybody that you can put, this little nuclear reactor in your kitchen and everything's going to be okay. And like your tater tots are going to be even better. Like, it just doesn't add up.
I didn't see my first microwave or CD till like 1993. So it was a real mind bender for me.
Did you microwave the CD?
Yeah, it's the first thing I tried.
Just combine them.
What did you like the most or value the most in that period before 92 or 93? I mean,
it's really,
there must have been some feature that you missed from the simpler time.
I guess I'm not sure. I mean, I just appreciate that, like I said, the perspective, but I definitely wouldn't want to go back to to that kind of existence or anything. I don't pine for the good old days, and it's just kind of a retrospect. Like, it's just interesting to track where you are. I guess if nothing else, it kind of makes you appreciate, what you got, that kind of thing. And, there's something you mentioned, I forget what you were saying just a few minutes ago, that made me think about the fact that, like, as the past, the rotary phones and everything, we're glad we're over that. But I kind of regret a little bit that we're past this age where there was a little more choices, like the Amiga, like there were choices of like kinds of computers or kinds of like entertainment devices. Like CDs were fun to like insert and whatever, like different players and stuff had interesting configurations. Like now you only get that in like anime movies or something, so things that celebrate like fun tech that looks weird and doesn't seem fully practical or user-friendly. Like I kind of miss tapes and discs and stuff sometimes, even though I know it's a headache, but I kind of like the aesthetic of it.
Yeah. Well,
hey, look at the vinyl is outselling CDs.
Yeah,
right.
I was going to say,
right.
That flipped over like 2 years ago. I think was the first time that vinyl had overtaken them since mid 80s.
Yeah. And there are communities that are getting into cassettes too. Like this is pretty weird, but
not dead.
But like dungeon synth is a genre of music that I like.
What is dungeon synth? What is dungeon? That's serial killer stuff.
I don't know what it is, but I feel like I can hear it in my mind what it is.
No, dungeon synth is like imagine like 80s RPG Dungeons and Dragons kind of music.
Okay.
It's like very medieval, Celtic kind of fantasy music, and for whatever reason, like that community is heavy into cassettes. So that's how you listen to dungeon synth. The proper way is you get the cassette and it's all scratchy and there's
you get that drag, that distortion because it's not spinning at a constant rate. It's lovely.
Oh, you can hear the gears of the cassette moving when you first click it on, and there's actually definitely like a flavor and a color to it.
I used one of various music in the Flight of the Navigator video, but I tried to stick to sort of this sort of 80s synthy thing for just to keep it thematically consistent. But I got one of these stock music libraries I got featured a lot of music they just went so heavy on this tape distortion sound where things go a little off key. It's like, man, you're doing it too much. Like, I love the way this sounds, but it's just like grinding my ear because it keeps being off key and that kind of.
They do that with the fake VHS effects too.
Yeah, it's a little. You can go
where you
overboard.
See the fake VHS. It's like have you watched a VHS? It wasn't this bad, guys.
Yeah, it was pretty clean most of the time.
It's always got these lines and the tracking and everything. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you realize this happened like once out of every 25 times you went to the video
And you'd
store.
fix
This
it.
is not every time.
And it would be on like 5
you'd push a
seconds of
button and
the
do it.
tape. Yeah. And I remember a couple of years ago, there was some artist or something. People started showing me this. I don't remember the band's name, but it was like some kind of like artist that just is being a character, like they don't show their face. And they were all about being from the 80s. Like it's these discovered tapes or records from the 80s or 90s. I don't know. And it was all like as if like, look, we found these tapes of this music videos of this crazy band. But it was very like VHS looking, and I was able to kind of see that they have those certain pop lines that are like, I know that's that plugin, like they have, because they use certain like elements that are pre-recorded and like tape damage that's loops, that's recognizable. So it was like, yeah, they tried to really create the illusion of being a discovered thing from the 80s, to the point where on Spotify the date of the publishing of the songs was like from 80s or 90s or whatever. But it's like, no, that's fake, man. I recognize that Red Giant VHS, Universe VHS plugin anywhere. I know that pop line. It happens right a little bit below the middle of the frame every few seconds.
Well, we've talked about the past and we've talked about obvious things, obvious errors. I want to talk about the future and the less obvious, because deep fakes are getting pretty good. There's an app, I forget what it's called. I've got it on my phone. I made videos of
Mug Life.
Eggy, for example. Yeah, when we had him on as a guest, you superimpose a face on a thing, and 12 minutes later, it spits out a deep faked video, and it's not 100%, but it's pretty good. And the fact that I can get it in the Apple Store, free is cool. Actual professionals making fake stuff. Some of it's pretty wild, and it seems like it's getting even more accurate. What is your job gonna be like down the line?
Well, people ask me about deepfakes and to do a video on deepfakes, and I at this time, like, it's something that's fun to explain as a technical thing. And here's, we did our deepfake, and this is how it works. That's all fun and good, but I don't know in terms of like my kind of thing of explaining a particular instance of it. If it's the time to do that, because it's like, we went from where they looked super glitchy and fake to really convincing now. But I feel like it almost slipped past from being not something that's, I don't know if that sounds conceited, but like not something that's good enough for me to cover, to something that is no longer my domain. Because it's like,
interesting.
It's like, it just goes to like, now the way you deal with deepfakes is you just don't trust, you just allow for the possibility that things can be fake, even if you can't explain the exact technical reason why something is fake. Like, we're living in that kind of world, and it's a little scary, but it's okay. Like, in a way, it's freeing, because you could just say, well, now I have to rely not on the fact that that person with that face is doing that thing in this clip, or they're in this location or whatever, where they shouldn't be. But it's more about like the context. Like, are there other reasons to think they're not there? Because this is supposed to have been taken at this time, but the person was in this city at this time, and we can prove it another way, kind of forensic kind of things. And it's, in a way, I guess I don't want to say it's better for everyone, but it's sort of like, it puts the focus on other things. It's puts the focus, or it makes everyone pull back a little bit and think things through, and not just focus on the fact that they're seeing something and that's causing them to draw a conclusion about, that this is actually happening. I mean, that's my optimistic outlook on it. But also, I think when it comes to detecting deepfakes, it's more about as the tools to create deepfakes grow more advanced, the tools to detect them also grow more advanced. So it's really like, you're not going to rely on Captain D, like looking at the pixels to figure out deepfakes. It's more going to be an algorithm. And there are tools like that, being developed all the time. So it's just going to be an arms race of you put your footage through this learning, deep learning thing to make that, and you're going to put it through another one to detect if there's evidence of that being done. That's as simple as it gets.
Almost like virus, antivirus.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like to me. But go ahead.
Can I interject a question real quick on this? Because it's really odd to me that video was the ultimate proof for a few decades. Like if something was on tape, that was it.
Yeah.
There's no explaining that away. Nobody had played with it. If you were on the security camera with a murder weapon, like you did it, you're going to jail. And now you're saying that videos can very well hit a point where we just instinctively just do not trust it. Is there any kind of, I don't know if you'd call it psychological or sociological implications to something being so roundly and completely trusted, and then a couple days later, that trust is 100% skepticism?
Something else that isn't video evidence?
I'm trying to think of anything other than video that's gone from being like the ultimate purveyor of truth to,
in a way,
something you should be skeptical about.
Right. I mean, we kind of, in a more abstract way, I feel like we kind of, or the public generally feels that way about just media and the news and stuff, right? I mean, some more reasonably than others, but it's like, I feel like we're all part of media, like being in on the tricks. I don't want to call them tricks, but like the way that media is created, the way that news is created, like we're all like tweeting our own little, headlines and stuff every day. So we kind of get what it is. And sometimes we can feel like, well, this news outlet is presenting this story and I am interested in that story, but I can also tell the way that they're spinning it in a way, and I get what the real truth is, but I also get that they're trying to create a little bit of like, they're trying to present it in a more controversial way than it maybe really is. So maybe just generally like the news and information, like we look at it that way now, like stuff that comes from media sources. But of course, it's not like we trusted it unconditionally before and now we don't trust any news ever. It's just more of an awareness. I don't know. Wouldn't you say? I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's definitely a good thing. It's good to have a healthy set of skepticism. Matt, when you were talking, I was thinking, what about your parents? Like when you were a kid, you trust them all the way. And then all of a sudden, like Billy on the playground tells you like his parents said Santa Claus isn't real. And you're like, wait a minute, I've been lied to by these people. My worldview is shattered.
Did you guys,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, like, whenever that sort of trope happens in movies and stuff, or just people tell you the story that happened to them, like the day they've realized something's not real, I never remember from my own life experiencing it in those terms. Like, I feel like when I was a kid, I kind of like allowed for like a magical realism of the world. Like you believe in these things, but you feel like it's this like superimposed reality on like what's going on. So when your parents get serious or they're like, no, you kind of get that there's like things can be true, but also not true at the same time. Like that's how I remember my brain working. So I never had these moments of like totally being literally disillusioned with something. Maybe I blocked them out. Maybe I was so traumatized that I just don't remember. I like to think I always kind of had a grasp on the reality.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about knowing things, everything does kind of work this way, where you have a simplistic understanding and it's a little bit more nuanced, as you go along. Like nobody in getting a little history lesson in second grade is getting the full picture. It has to be a simple presentation of whatever the topic is. And well, maybe 10, 15 years later, you really get into the weeds and you find out that great men and women all had terrible qualities. And this one thing was fantastic, but had some terrible, awful side effects for some people. That's the way it works. And we seem to be pretty comfortable with that. Like nobody's mad when they find out more evidence to understand something like history. They believe it and they feel good that they've done that. And so it seems like a built-in process that everybody's real good with, but they're only applying that to things like media lately, more frequently are they doing that now? And I'm not sure why it wasn't ingrained from the beginning.
Yeah, hard to say. I feel like sometimes people don't give the history, sometimes people judge history or unconstructively maybe, but I think we do generally a good job with that, because the point is to learn from it, right? But sometimes history becomes the news story or something. You see that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that did play out throughout the 20th century in your neck of the woods with a certain version of events. I mean, am I forgetting this? Pravda is truth, isn't it?
Yes, it was the newspaper.
So the state newspaper was literally called Truth.
Yeah.
So what's in that is going to be that, and then something like the gulags comes out with Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, reveals a whole bunch of things, and all of a sudden there's nuance to that truth and kind of a new version of it. Right. And that swings back and forth, but is that a good thing to have these massive swings, or should it be gradual, or what?
I mean, I guess it's a good thing, and I guess these things just build up. It's when we were in school or something, Columbus Day wasn't weird, but it's not as if that was that much more recent or something, right? But now it's a little bit off color and let's rename it. Let's not really focus on that kind of thing. Because it's something reaches a critical mass, your outlook on history accumulates and your awareness reaches a certain point where you're this is weird. It's weird to celebrate this weird thing or whatever, even if it's traditional. I guess these things, they just have to build up to critical mass.
What version of life did you get as you were kind of touring around as a kid? Because so basically until about 12 or so, right? You had this one experience in worldview. How did that develop from so many places and people?
I mean, I guess thinking about it now, it just feels kind of maybe it was a movie I saw rather than it was my life. It's kind of till school age, it was my daily life was weird even for my other contemporaries then. I was, as a kid of circus parents, traveling around the country doing weird shows and seeing all these kind of artists and creative people that can do unusual things and have all these skills was kind of I guess stimulating to my mind, I'm sure, in some way, and feeling. And also I remember a feeling just being a circus kid that hangs out in these places with other kids. My friends were mostly children of other performers, and we just run around a little Alice in Wonderland kind of world, except there were also grumpy, stagehands or something, and it's there was fun things and really sort of depressing, just run of the mill production of a circus show things all mixed into one. And I don't know, it just all I remember is it being kind of fun and a whirlwind and feeling I guess that's how life is. And then at the age of 6, you go to school and things become very normal and by the book, and you become that sort of strange kid in class who zones out and stuff because he's thinking about, being in a circus show on the road again rather than stuck in this classroom. And but I'm still in a very traditional little school that could have been you could have set a movie that's set in 1960s in my class as a kid, or it could be the 80s. It was very nondescript, very traditional. And then I moved to America, and it's kind of suddenly being thrown into future world or something. Things are so, at that exact moment in that year, things were so different. The Soviet Union had just started, it had fallen apart. The year before is when it officially kind of stopped being a thing.
Right. 91 is when it officially stopped.
Okay, I guess,
92,
2 years, yeah.
I'm asking.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I couldn't remember
when Russia became just Russia. I thought that was 92, but I can't remember.
There wasn't from my little recollection as a little kid, there wasn't this like feeling of revolution in the air or anything. It was just a lot of bureaucracy, and they would show on television these sort of Senate sort of proceedings. I don't know what what branch of government or what it was called, but they would show these like stuff like C-SPAN kind of stuff, and they would vote on all these propositions and how to restructure things and how to like transition from being one thing to another. And it was just a lot of vote counting and a lot of like procedure. But then all of a sudden, like, oh, where we live, which was Latvia, which is the city of Riga in what is now the country of Latvia, that was just part of Soviet Union. It was like a state. But hey, now it's not a state anymore. Now you're in a different country. And, I think it's probably time to start learning the local language, because this isn't Russia. This is Latvia. There's a Latvian language. There's Latvian culture. And you're suddenly like a sort of what I imagine would be like English UK natives in like Hong Kong or something, It is where you live. It is where you grew up, but it is also not. It's a different country, and you need to deal with that. You can't ignore that. So, but that's right around the time when my parents had made the decision to come to America, and they actually went a couple of years before me. So I kind of lived with my grandmother there for a long while, and then it took some like work for them at that time to get some kind of status here, so that they could then bring me over. So it was a series of like very weird changes. And like I said, I was just going to say, coming here was like a really big, just change in environment, but very positive. Like it was like, it made me think the dorkiest thing of like the scene in Back to the Future 2, when he like comes to the future at the beginning and takes a stroll through that city block.
Is he in Times Square or something
that? He's just in
it looks like that with all that.
Yeah, he's in the square that most of the movies take place on, like that same little area of Hill Valley, the center of the city, but it's always changing. And so this was like the feeling of like coming out of JFK Airport, just like, wow, this is also very bustling and advanced. But I was still young enough to not be freaking out about it. Like, oh my God, my life has been turned upside down. It was more like, well, I haven't seen my parents for 2 years, and now I finally get to be reunited with them. And I always wanted to live in America anyway. Like I kind of had that outlook already. So it felt.
So that was my question: is whether you were, pumped for this or.
Oh, for sure.
Wanting to.
I was sort of like always obsessed with like. I mean, we're like obsessed with everything about America and American media. And because it was sort of this stuff that would only trickle in, like you didn't get really anything except certain little pieces of media they would buy, like this movie, this show. And things started to kind of like trickle in more and more, not only from the US, but like other countries, because it was pretty closed off. Like media from even like next door countries wasn't that common. And then I just really, I don't know, I was obsessed with like Disney and all this kind of things. And they started showing a couple of like these Disney afternoon cartoon shows. And it just was, my life became all about that, drawing Disney characters and doing all this stuff, like consuming whatever little bit of stuff that they were providing. And so I was kind of like, yeah, please more. I would like to subscribe to your newsletter. And so, I was very like, yes, I'm done. I got everything I can get out of this place. I would like to move over there now. And
I have a couple of questions. For the first one is, do you have any sense of what they allowed to trickle through? Like, I don't quite understand. I mean, this like is Flight of the Navigator. Yeah. Yes, bring it on in. But like, what is that process?
I really don't know. That's like maybe an exploratory video I'd have to do and research that. It seemed like a little bit arbitrary, but this is something to ask, people of my parents' generation who were like adults dealing with real life things at that time. Because I remember, like, for example, people trying to like there were places where somehow you could get your radio, like those analog radios that you can like mechanically tune with the little knob, through all those whistling frequencies, to like some kind of Voice of America. Like there was some kind of station. I don't understand if it was relayed from the US or it was a Russian thing that was like a kind of a pseudo underground, I don't know, thing like of news from America, but that was not a sanctioned thing. And I remember like adults talking about being able to catch that station like with this one radio this guy has, things like that. And I mean, I don't know, like I think as I was going from being like a baby or a toddler to like someone that's conscious and self-aware, that extreme Iron Curtain was like fading away. It didn't just happen overnight. So it wasn't that weird. Like we would get my parents had friends that had already immigrated to the US in terms of like political asylum kind of thing. And they would send sometimes care packages and like, oh, you got blue jeans. That's so cool. And it wasn't like impossible. So it was like a thing that was eroding slowly. But I'm sure that at the worst of times that, you know, it was very strict and I'm sure they made a lot of funny, nonsensical decisions on the government level as to what piece of media is unpatriotic for some strange reason. Like maybe E.T. was like off limits because it makes you think about other places that could be different, but maybe not so bad. Like, I don't know. They probably had reasons like that they,
right.
You know.
Well,
I want to ask a real quick, highly specific thing here, because it's something that's always puzzled me and just popped into my head. In 1989, the Soviet Union issued a series of postage stamps called the American Frontier Scenes, and all 5 of these postage stamps were drawn from James Fenimore Cooper novels. If anybody's seen The Last of the Mohicans, that's the most famous of them. I'm so perplexed that this thing even exists, that in 1989, the Soviet government was thinking, you know, people are really going to love these these stamps, these 20 kopeck stamps that have, you know, scenes out of a novel from the 1830s. Why do you think that happened?
I don't know. I guess, honestly,
I mean, was there just this consciousness of like the American culture stuff being quite cool?
Yeah, I mean,
historically.
Again, I am just talking about it, like speculating about it, like you, because I was too young to have any inkling of why or whatever. But I imagine that, yeah, like it's not like people weren't aware of the American culture and the, you know, content, whatever, like today we would say just media and works of art and stuff. So I suppose they didn't, I assume they wanted to give people something and not feel like, you know, when you fully isolate your people from a particular culture, they're just going to seek it out more. I don't know. So maybe they thought like, this is a nice friend. Like I'm sure American literature some of it was available and popular in the Soviet Union. It's just, yeah, it all went through a filter that someone made decisions as to what is appropriate or not appropriate for the people, I assume. And yeah, this sounds like these things seem like classic enough works that maybe it was fine. Actually, like I recall that even as a kid, like what they didn't have for children's entertainment was like long-running shows. Like even the concept of any kind of series that continues with episodes and seasons was like a very new idea. I remember they started showing like Mexican soap operas and stuff, and everyone, because because the Soviet Union didn't, like the audience didn't experience that format before, everyone just went so hard for it. Like everyone became obsessed with this one soap opera, and then I recognize the picture in the Discord now. This show was called The Rich Cry Too. Los ricos también lloran or something. I don't know how you say it in Spanish. And it was a Mexican soap opera about this lady that enters some family of rich people or something, and she's a common sort of Cinderella woman. And then there was another one that was like from Portugal maybe, and it was sort of about plantation times and the life of like slaves and the owners of the plantation or something like that. People went like, they ate that up, I remember. So I don't know why I got on this track. Yeah, just to say that, so as far as cartoons and things, until we saw American stuff, we didn't have anything that was a long-running series. So we had like one-off different artsy cartoons. And I remember one of them, I was like kind of taken with this story about this moose or whatever, that creatures were taking a ride on his antlers. And I found out only like 2 years ago that that's actually like a is it like a Dr. Seuss or something, some American piece of content that they just adapted and made their own cartoon of. They also did that with Winnie the Pooh and a few other things like Alice in Wonderland. They just had Russian versions, and they weren't like rebranded as something else. They were Alice in Wonderland and Winnie the Pooh, but just as if they, made it up, I guess. I don't know what the situation was with whether it was done legitimately or not, but there is like Soviet versions of all these classic American.
The Simpsons did a joke about that. Wasn't there like a Soviet Itchy and Scratchy?
Yeah, I remember that, and they weren't far off with.
There's Tanya Grader. Tanya Grader is the female Harry Potter.
Oh, okay. This is after my time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but there's such a pattern of these things where it's like, I wouldn't call it a knockoff because that implies completely inferior quality, and it's not always the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're saying about these variations back in the day, like it's still going on.
Yeah.
Check out Tanya Grader.
I mean, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I would call that sort of, I guess uncharitably you'd say that's a knockoff. But I think like these things I mentioned, they were literally they just were like, this is our version of that thing. Like they weren't shy about like trying to make you think. I guess as a kid, I didn't know this came from somewhere else, but I'm sure I'm not sure. I think they licensed these things. And it was just like, well, for our audience, this is what Winnie the Pooh looks like or whatever. And he's called that same thing. And it's just our version of it. Maybe that's, I don't know if for some reason they had that attitude. Like art needs to be interpreted for your local culture or something. Maybe that was the thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it fascinating. We have so many questions from our patrons to get to, but they have to wait because I have more questions. And
all right.
and I need to ask them before we get to our patrons. The first one is it's going back a little bit to when you settled into school, because when I was 8 years old, my parents moved our family from Long Island to Cooperstown, New York, and on Long Island, it's heavily populated. It's the schools have a ton of kids in them, and you have so many friends, and each you go to you can walk to all different kinds of friends' houses, and play tag, and we'd have these huge like neighborhood manhunt games, which was basically tag. But anyway. You're on top of 1 million people, and it was very exciting as a kid. But when we moved upstate, it was really kind of the opposite. Very rural area. You couldn't walk anywhere because I think some of my closest friends would be a 15-minute drive just to get to their house. It was very.
This is a feature. This is a feature, not a bug.
Just let me finish, okay? I'm 8 years old. I don't see this as a feature as an 8-year-old. I see this as my life ending. It was terrible. I did not want to move from this place that as a child I felt was incredibly exciting to this place that I thought was incredibly boring. Now, I cannot imagine being you growing up in a traveling circus family and then having to go to some boring school and sit there all day. Do you remember how you felt when you first had to make that transition and what that was like?
Yeah, I guess I felt, to be honest, I don't think it was that dramatic. Like I did have that sort of airheaded quality to me where I'd rather be doing something fun or like see my friends from the circus. But that life was also very transitory. Is that a word? It was like, it would be like these periods of like, well, we're going to this city for this, month and a half, and this is going to be the group of people that is the troupe of that particular show. And by the way, circus in the Soviet Union was like kind of like a more elevated art form, I guess, or something, because every major city had like an actual building, like the way you'd have a sports stadium. They had like a building for a circus show that was kind of like classy and stuff. And so I don't know what that says about, they just liked it as an art form, I guess. So anyway, you'd go to this place and you've never been there before, and you've never met some of these people before that you're going to work with, as far as my parents are concerned. And I've never met some of these kids that I'm going to hang out with. But then you form this little community while you're there, and while this common effort of putting on this show continues for a month or two, and then it's over. And it's like finishing a movie production or something. Like it was very tight knit. It was very happy, and like it's something that only the people that were part of that could understand and appreciate. And then the final day ends, and nobody needs anybody anymore. Like everyone's just leaving. It's over. And as I remember as a little kid, because I'd still go to those things during summer break. So it's not like that life completely ended. But I remember at a certain age, I don't know exactly when, maybe like I was 9 or something, maybe 8 or 9. We were leaving, one of those periods was over, and we were just like driving out of the hotel and leaving. And I, for the first time, felt kind of sad because I was like, wow, I actually, like my brain's now a little like sophisticated enough to have appreciated this whole thing from start to end. And I'm a little bit sad that it's over. Like I didn't last summer break, I didn't worry about the fact that it's over and we're leaving and it's never going to happen again like this exactly in this place. So like you hit that certain age and you get a little sentimental about these things. But yeah, like going to school, I felt that thing like, well, I'm a little special kid because I'm a circus kid and I get to do these fun things that, the regular kids don't have an equivalent for. But it was just like a stupid little thing in my head. And I made friends okay and everything, like, but that school life was just its own thing. And I was a little weird, a little goofy, or like a little strange. But I think I wasn't like a loner or anything in Riga in Latvia in my grade school days. But coming to the US, that changed a lot more because then it's like you're really a fish out of water, and the school environment was always fine, but I definitely went into the zone where I didn't really like make like actual friends. It was just like people in school, and sorry to also backtrack, even in my like home life when I was in school, where I lived, I had a little neighborhood like what you described, like the little neighborhood rowdies running around the courtyard and having fun. There was like this block of kindergarten exterior like play areas behind the building where I lived. So my best friend and I would like climb over the chain link fences and run around there during, when these institutions were closed for the summer or whatever. So all of that I no longer in America had that thing anymore of like just like having neighborhood friends and little buddies to hang out with. I just had school friends and just kind of had like my own world at home.
You must have been the coolest kid in school, though. I mean, who else was walking around with that story?
No, I mean, it was sort of cool, but for some reason I wasn't cool. Like I was kind of like the strange kid. And another thing, there's like, it's hard to describe because there's also the whole element of like, Soviet Union was like this multicultural place in a way because it encompassed all these different republics of people that are not all just kind of like white Russian people, but it was a little bit, that's the majority of people. And I'm actually, my mother's Russian, my father's Armenian, and it's not like anything that doesn't mean anything in today's world in America, but in a way, like in Russia, it was like, oh, you're not like all the way Russian. You're Armenian, and that actually counted for something. So that was a little bit of like, I was the only half Armenian kid in my class. And so that makes you like a little bit of an outsider in a very mild way. Like I didn't experience any like actual bullying and things like that from that, but it's just these little overtones. And just, I guess I was kind of geeky, but not like a smart nerd kind of geeky guy, more just like a airheaded, like
that's
artsy
how I can
guy.
consider myself. A dumb geek. That's me.
Right.
That's Kevin Lieber, the smooth brained geek. Oh, so we really have to get to questions. We have so many of them, but before that, I'm going to get my last question in, which is, I'm sure you have movies in mind to do for VFX Cool, and if you don't want to spoil anything, that's cool too. But do you have any sort of sense of? I'm just drooling at the prospect of watching more of those videos. Do you have any sense of some movies you'd like to do like a similar treatment on? Yeah, there's the Flight of the Navigator.
There's honestly nothing to spoil because I'm sure there are movies like that, but I'd have to kind of dig through my own like soul to decide what is worth it for me to have like that personal care for it, because I think there are good candidates, but this just happened to be one of those like good not only is it like, oh, it's a fun thing from my childhood that's nostalgic, but it happens to have all this kind of gold mine of information about it, Flight of the Navigator, that because there isn't like there's good behind the scenes materials and things, for example, for the Neverending Story and certain iconic movies like that. But this is just one of those blind spots that happens to exist where no one cared to like do an inside look into this movie at the time, so it had to be pieced. And even like no one even has done a retrospective like this. Like there's no Cinefex article about that film even from back then. So it's a lucky situation, and it was so hard to do. Like if I ever do, and this was kind of my first long format video on the channel ever, so I was learning how to do it. And if I ever do that again, I think I wouldn't. The way that it's done behind the scenes, the process of how I did it, it's too hard to do it the way I did it. So it would have to be done in some more efficient, more like logical way with a producer's mind. And because it was so nearly like, I guess I shouldn't say traumatizing to make, but it was like so like nothing about it was easy until the very end, that I feel like I don't even, it's scary to think about doing another video like that. But I'm sure someday I'll feel for doing that again. And I hope I come across something that sparks enough interest from me and is good for the viewers.
Well, just real quickly, I will say that I would love to see a Neverending Story one, because even if there are behind the scenes things out there, dude, I don't care about watching those. I want to see your interpretation and your video on it. It's just way different. Like watching some DVD extras, it does not, get me out of bed in the morning.
That's pleasant to hear.
You know what I mean?
I guess, I should think of it that way more. And what's interesting is I've only done these two-part thing of VFX School and Back to the Future, and now Flight of the Navigator. And I happen to have, I show it in the end of the Flight of the Navigator video. I have this Japanese sort of like cool like movie lobby brochure for Flight of the Navigator. But I also happen to have, like when I got it as a triplet little thing of, there's one for Back to the Future, which in retrospect I should have featured in that video, but I didn't. But I also have one for Neverending Story. So there's something cosmic about it, the fact that I have these three brochures. So perhaps I'll start feeling different, and maybe that's going to be the third one for a nice trilogy. Yeah, we'll see.
All right, Matt, you want to hop into questions? I know we're running long, but I could go another 3 hours with Alan.
No worries. I'm not in a hurry.
Yeah, well, I will. We have so many questions. We have so many people tonight, and the patrons came out in droves, which is awesome.
Nice.
But it means a lot of questions. Most of them fairly straightforward, so we can machine gun this a little bit. Trev's is pretty good here. Is AI going to play more of a part in animation entertainment in general in the future?
Well, I don't know. I don't think of myself as an authority on that field, but I hope not. Like, because that's not animation. Is that too like broad to say? Like, I guess there might be interesting applications to that, but like, I think even now we're all kind of a little bit critical of like things that, in television animation, things are like very rigged up and very made as efficient as possible, so that like you can produce the content and not really like agonize over like how to depict this scene, how to do this action. Like every character is rigged up as a sort of digital puppet so that they can do all these things. You predetermine how they behave, what mouth, expressions they have for dialogue. And that's really nice and efficient. But some would argue, it takes away a little bit from the artistry of it. I don't think it's that bad. And I think a lot of shows do a great job with that. And you wouldn't be able to tell, you can't tell that that's the way they do it. It seems like traditional animation. But I'm sure there's a lot of room for that, for AI in that sort of thing. Like, I'm sure you can get to the point where you no longer have to like operate the rig manually and choose the mouth positions. I'm sure you could the dialogue that's being fed to a character can just be interpreted by an algorithm, and they just make them talk. I mean, we already have that in a way, right? With like different CG stuff. So I hope that the art of it stays alive, and that a little bit of manual artistry in animation is always good. That's my 2 cents.
Well, the next one is 2 traditional movies. We're going to swing back that way. It's from the Kino Corner. And he wants to know from you, what old Soviet movie has the coolest special effects?
I recall there were a lot of fun movies for kids. Like they did. It's funny. We were talking about like the knockoffs and adaptations. There's a cool Pinocchio movie. There was a. I'm trying to think of like legit visual effects. They had like these sort of fairy tale films. I remember one of the things I liked. There was this miniseries called like Gestus. The way I would translate it is just Gestus from the Future. Guest from the Future. It's about a girl. It's about a story like a kid discovers a time machine in this basement, and just a time travel story. He goes into this into the future. He meets a girl there, whatever. And it wasn't like none of it holds up at all. I actually checked it out a couple of years ago, and it's nostalgic for me. We have the poster there in the Discord, but the effects don't hold up. But they really were trying to think outside the box with that show, and they were trying to like do little things, flying cars and things like that. And it's very endearing and hokey, like to see it now. But I respect it was giving me that slight Flight of the Navigator vibe where I'm like, I'm small enough to appreciate this, and I don't know how they did some of the things because I'm a little kid. So I guess that would be my recommendation, but not for any like narrative or story reasons, just because it's fun to see Soviet era sci-fi visual effects.
Yeah, and that really was an interesting time. I see from the link, Tom Videogre, quick on the links in the Discord. It says aired in 1985, and that was just such an interesting transition period in terms of technology everywhere. One thing was happening in the Soviet Union, one thing was happening elsewhere, but it was just a critical time, and I can see that being an era that just would have made an impression.
Yeah, for cinephiles and sophisticated film connoisseurs, like what's his name? There's a filmmaker called Tarkovsky. Like he did unless I'm mixing people up, he did the Solaris movie, the original one that the American remake was based on. And I think that guy was into sort of like, it was like 2001 Space Odyssey vibes and like things like that. So I guess in the world of grown-up stuff, there's also that example. And there's probably many things I just don't know about. But yeah, there's plenty to dig into if you start exploring Soviet era films.
Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit to videos. The first one is from Dan the Latch. I think a lot of people have this question. How much of a hassle is it to put on the face paint? Have you ever had anything like an allergic reaction with any of that?
No, I've never had the Wizard of Oz allergic reaction thing. I mean, I would have just like stopped it from the start, but yeah, it's better to not have to do it at all, or it's more annoying than not doing any makeup. But I always felt like, hey, it's such a relatively little effort to stand out so clearly in a thumbnail or just in a video that I just made that decision from the first episode, and I always felt like I don't question it. Like, I think it's fun. Like, I do the thing of like Alan the Intern sometimes. And for example, in this latest video, I kind of decided that maybe VFX Cool videos could be the kind of videos that I don't do as the character, because it seems like a strange layer to talk about movie effects and still be funny and surreal about it somehow. Like, it just felt like clashing. So I struggled with it on the Back to the Future stuff. So I thought, and plus I knew I needed to touch props and I needed to visit locations and do all these things that just was like too much of a headache. So I made the strategic decision. But when I'm having fun with it, in normal episodes, debunking things, I just think it's like a little safety blanket. Like, I'm not like a super talented or even at all kind of like professional performer. So like, it really helps it's like I put it on like war paint, and it just gives you that feeling like now I'm somebody else. I have permission to act and present myself in a certain way, and it just gives it that little feeling of fun. But yeah, the ears is just so annoying, like putting it all on, getting into every crevice, and then getting it all off, because I do have to take it off at the end, and that part takes longer than applying it. So it is a little bit of a pain, but I try not to think about it.
Well, another video question.
Hold on. I'm throwing a flag on the play on the no talent, the no talent performer thing.
God.
That's getting a red card from me. That's preposterous. I will not let that slide. So, Matt, you can go to the next question, but let it be known that I have flagged that as being a preposterous statement.
All right,
No, I want to follow this up because these are the tangents we go down. But did I send you that thing, Kevin, about humility? The research on status and humility.
Which one?
It was from a Rob Henderson tweet. I know a couple people.
Was it about the Twitter bios?
No. It was about self-deprecation in general. And there's this famous quote from Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel back in the day, who said something like, "You shouldn't be humble. You're not good enough to be." And it basically showed that you can only pull off self-deprecation and that kind of humility when you're actually awesome, and it adds to the experience. If you aren't that good and you do it, it just makes you a loser. So,
well, then.
So the little no talent bit actually works in this case precisely because the opposite.
No. Now I want to say that I'm awesome. I'm the best ever.
The real quick, the Twitter bio thing, just so I don't throw that out there without context, was it was a screen cap of some person who their Twitter bio said they were like an entrepreneur and a CEO and, some sort of like business guru genius. And it was a guy with, 3 followers. And then it was a Twitter bio of some, billionaire. It was Dan Gilbert, who owns the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Dan Gilbert's bio was like former pizza delivery guy. And it was just the juxtaposition between this person who is likely unsuccessful, projecting their success through their Twitter bio, and the guy who is wildly, successful in business, downplaying and trying to act like a normal, quote unquote, person.
Well, can I share something with you right now? It's kind of on topic on this. I have a conundrum because with this video, because when it was premiering on the day that the Flight of the Navigator videos was premiering, I was like preparing for the premiere, and I quickly tweeted out, or on all the social media, I tweeted, or I guess after it came out, I tweeted a thing really quick, just to be like the post, like, here's the video. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm telling this badly. It was right on the edge of the premiere, and I was in a hurry, and I wrote a tweet, like the one that's currently pinned to my Twitter, where it's like, I worked for 7 months to do this greatest thing ever. It came across a little pompous, a little bit like self-assured and claiming like this is really cool. And I pinned it, and now I feel like, well, I wish I wrote it a different way, because that feels weird to have that pinned on the top of my thing, because it's a little self-congratulatory. But I don't want to do another tweet of the video again that's down to earth, because I feel like I'm pushing the video too hard, and I don't want to put in everyone's face again. So that's the kind of thing my brain struggles with.
Well,
these are the internal battles that ruin us.
Tom Videogre posted it, and I'll say again, it's not there. No lies were told, and no hyperbole was used in this tweet. Man, it says, "I spent the last 7 months." Okay, that's a fact. Creating the world's most thorough breakdown of the VFX of Flight of the Navigator. Also a fact.
Also factual.
Objectively factual. Whether you know or love the movie, it's a pretty engaging. Okay, so you're downplaying it right there. It's a pretty engaging, I guess, if you like engaging stuff, 40-minute piece of content.
I don't know. That's so full of
not over the top. That is like a pretty straightforward and not at all grandiose
All right.
announcement of this video you spent 7 months on.
Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about that.
I suppose I need to adjust my perception. All right. All right. I'll work on that.
Well, this is videos in general. Andre APM wants to know how you usually get ideas for videos. Do you look around for things? Do you have this running list where you keep ranking and re-ranking things? Is it fan requests? How does it happen?
If I were a good producer, if I had a good producer side, I would do it like those suggestions. Like I do need like a queue of good candidates that I kind of like gather and then search through. And I do have like on my little Discord, like I have a channel that's just like give suggestions. And of course, people send me a lot of suggestions and like messages and stuff. But I find like it is, as time goes on, it is more of like panning for gold kind of process, because not only it should be like an interesting video to even look at, like an interesting candidate, not just the same old thing we've seen before. A video whose explanation I didn't cover in some other case, like it's not too similar to something before, and just a video that makes for an interesting discussion. And it's not like there are many things that people ask that I could just do a tweet, and sometimes I do just like explain it in a tweet. So it's like, as the more videos I make, the more, it's not that there is a shortage of topics, but like I keep trying to find like a new angle for it. So the answer is I just kind of stare blankly around, and sometimes I'm lucky and someone gives me a really good suggestion. Sometimes something pops up in the news, but it's like, it feels like not a thing that would be nowadays. Like a lot of things pop up and people talk about it for today, and then tomorrow no one wants to hear about it anymore. But some videos are like interesting to revisit in a couple of months, which, it'll take me at least a month to make something decent for one of my episodes. So I try to just like look and just like strike like a cobra. Like I sit there and just like something, there's a lot of good candidates, but what's going to be the one? And then I just like strike one and hope that it's going to prove like fruitful, I guess.
Isaac has a question that tacks right on to this one. And by the way, Isaac is a very good editor in his own right. But he's asking about the motivation to make longer videos like the VFX Cool series. And with your videos taking as long as they do, you just said at least a month on anything. Is it worth the extra time spent to put out those epic length videos?
Yeah, this one, I'm trying to see how it seems having put out this one. I didn't mean to make a really long video. I thought that this video would come out the way that the previous VFX Cool episodes came out, which are not nearly as long. But this just happened to be one of those things where we started like unraveling like this. It's like Pandora's box. Like I thought I knew everything about it, and then there were like a million things that I had no idea that I discovered. And I was like, I have this problem in general with videos where that's why they end up like kind of dense, like things are just flying at you at breakneck speed, because I'm trying to not make it boring, but like I come across more information and things I want to mention, and I'm trying to wedge them into that same small space. So there was so much information with this episode that it just kept expanding, and I was like, well, let's just go for like a long thing. I'll have like act breaks in it so that it feels like it's supposed to be this long. But I don't know, like I didn't intend, and it's not like part of a strategy that I think now my videos are gonna exploit, the whatever minimum, the 11-minute minimum thing. I try, maybe mistakenly, I don't think about that, and it's more like dictated by the content. So the answer to that question is, I don't even know if I'll ever make another long form video, and I don't know if long form videos are good for me or not. But this one's doing okay, and we'll see.
That's cool. Well, in making these videos, we have a question from Getterman. How is it that you get to recognize these effects? You talked about the red giant effect coming out to you. These plugins that you mentioned earlier, are they such go-to plugins that you just learn them all? Like how can you tell specifically what dust effect is used?
Well, it changed over time, because there was sort of a Wild West period of when more people were keen to do fake videos and little viral things, but not everyone had the skill to do it. So what you fall back on like these plugins and things, and you kind of do the bare minimum to make something look, well, an explosion. Well, I'll just use this piece of stock footage for an explosion. And there was a relatively small amount of like different go-to plugins that were marketed to regular people. You're not going to go like buy a Getty Images like stock footage of an explosion for $500, right? Just to make a fake viral video. You're going to use like a video copilot thing that you can buy for $5 or whatever. And like everyone already uses, and they can probably, get you a copy. So yeah, there was a time when that was really easy and almost like funny. Like I would just base sometimes an explanation because I would look at something and I'm like, I recognize that thing. That's from this. And that would be funny to say, like just show it side by side. But now that's not as common, and people are now, there's more of a market, I guess, for like just interesting effects and fake videos and just like fun, Zach King style fun things, and legitimately talented artists work on them and make their own stuff from scratch. So I feel like it's a thing that's I get to do less and less, but it's fun when you spot some of these things by accident.
Well, we've got a deeply serious question. Honestly, it's the one that we probably should have opened the podcast with. Yes. Conrad 500 wants to know whether you call yourself Captain D in the bedroom.
Well, of course. I mean, why do you think I named the whole sub-series Quick D? It's, that's the whole running joke. The name didn't form by accident. No, I mean, I get a lot in this genre of humor. A lot of comments. My comment section is a gallery of jokes on this subject. So if anybody wants to get some more for their collection, check them out.
I can hear Conrad clicking already. Tom Videoger has another one of those combo things. Do you see the introduction of video game engines in film that allows effects to be done in engine?
Yeah.
Will that see a merge between the VFX world and in the game engine world?
Yeah, I don't know that much about video game stuff, even though I actually worked as an art director in an actual video game company for a really brief time, and it was a really funny, like, small startup thing. But the point is, yes, I am fascinated by that whole thing. The Mandalorian, the whole volume, the projection using Unreal Engine in conjunction with camera motion tracking. It's really cool. It's fun, and I don't know. I guess I haven't dealt with that myself. I haven't tried it, but the possibilities are interesting, and how they've been using it on these shows is awesome. But I suspect that sometimes some of it seems like, I don't know, not marketing, but like it's a little bit presented like cooler than what it is, because I could see a lot of course, if you want to light things in a realistic way and create like, volumetric kind of feel to your scenes and environment, and of course have a background already ready to go and camera motion built in, it's really useful. But the way movies and shows are made, sometimes it's like it's a trade-off. Like there's a lot of look development and details that need to be figured out after the filming process. So yeah, I guess it's great to decide on exactly what your environment is going to look like and every little detail and get it in camera. But a lot of times, like, some of these things aren't ready. So I feel like they use more than they let on. For example, in The Mandalorian, the whole feature of like projecting a little patch of green screen behind the characters, and just like doing a take or two. I suspect they do every take with a green screen version and a projected version, so that they have the option to, fix things and stuff, because you just can't. I don't know, like I haven't worked on big shows like that, but even when I make my own stuff, I can plan it to death, and then I still see like, oh, I didn't catch that little angle, or actually I wish we were a little bit tighter, or I could see that, I wish that thing in the background wasn't coming out of my head because it looks weird. And well, I got it in camera, and if I got it on green screen, I just shift that little thing. But if I got it in camera, it looks much prettier and more realistic, but I don't have a choice, or it's much more difficult to fix it. So sorry, I got off on a rant for some reason, but I think it's interesting and promising, but I also think it's sometimes like it's a double-edged sword, and it's presented as like, ooh, isn't this? Don't you think this is going to solve all our problems forever? Well, no, it's just a different way of doing ththings, and it comes with its own set of problems.
It is endlessly fascinating to hear somebody who knows what's up go into detail on that kind of stuff. So yeah, like the chat is, people in the chat are saying, no, I love this answer. Let me find one more. Oh, a quickie here. Monsieur Chinchilla, why don't you have a superhero comic or movie yet? I think that's a valid question.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to make that for myself. I've entertained the idea. Like sometimes I've thought it might be fun to like make a little silly like comic book, like a couple of issues of a little comic. But the thing is like, and I can kind of sort of draw, and like I'm interested in doing that sometimes literally, but I'm not like at a level where I could actually undertake that. So it would be cool to get with an artist or something to mess around with something like that. I feel like, how there's like this whole genre of graphic novels that are just like educational, like, oh, perspective drawing or whatever, or science stuff. And it's just like a comic, but its main point is to just like present something for you to learn. Maybe it could be that kind of thing. Like I could be debunking more broad topics that are not visual in the form of a little comic book, or it should just be lore and adventure and stuff I don't get to explore in my videos. It's food for thought. Thank you for asking that. I'll think about that.
That was solid. Well, we have to entertain a question from Dr. Uwu, who is struggling with pneumonia, but is committed to listening to this entire episode live.
Feel better.
So we're going to throw him in before bad gets worse. He wants to know what you did to Captain Illusion. Where are you hiding his body? He knows that you're a murderer and that you can't hide from him.
Listen, we all have two sides. It's a matter of which one you'll embrace. And I chose to embrace this, and I have no regrets. And I don't think you'll be hearing from Mr. Illusion anytime soon. I don't know.
That's ominous. Ominous and very final. But I want to tack something on it. Do you think there's a point at which down the line, Captain Disillusion will fade into the sunset? Do you think it's a persona you could ever retire?
I mean, could I retire? No, it's impossible. Come on. Like, he'll live on forever. I fully expect to be doing this all the way into my advanced age. No, I don't know. I mean, of course, you have to think about stuff like that. I'm constantly trying to gauge, like, I don't want to have an opinion on that because I'm trying to, like, always listen to what is the response from the audience, or like, just in terms of how my videos do, how do people perceive, like, is it getting in the way, doing it in character and stuff like that. And I am also like so strangely old, for for YouTube in a way, you could say, maybe. And like, I don't want to overstay my welcome that way, but I don't know if it requires just like dropping the shtick and maybe just suddenly I'll come out with like normal down-to-earth video essays, or if it's just a matter of like tweaking things and gracefully aging into something that makes more sense. I don't know. I mean, you guys tell me. Like, how is Captain D over? Have we had enough? I don't know.
Oh, God, no.
Okay, good.
This is one of those self-deprecating moments. Yeah. You should be so careful when you're on top of the world like that because you might trip and fall off. No. Everything is outstanding. But some people do have that planned obsolescence built right into a thing where they're like, I'm going to accomplish X, Y, or Z, and after that, I'll do something else, or I'll at least shut this down. And I think other people have that. I'll just figure it out as I go along.
All I know is, I mean, I've talked about this in other kind of like Q&As and things where I did just, before Captain D happened, like I was just a film student, aspiring to be a filmmaker, making it big in Hollywood, like the typical kind of thing. And it's not like I've traded that in and I'm all in on Captain D. This is just something that like I enjoy doing and it worked out in a certain way. And I found a way to embrace it. Like this is what happens with YouTube channels that kind of work. You just, you experiment with something and it grows in like a healthy way. But I think I would like to achieve something beyond this. And so as I get older, I always think about that, and I'm trying to see what can I do to just outside of my YouTube channel that might grow similarly to how the YouTube channel grew. And when that happens, I'm sure I'll feel more confident just sunsetting the whole Captain D thing. But right now, Captain D is what I am trying to grow or keep alive. I don't know. What's a less depressing way to say it? Yeah.
Well, it seems like you're sustaining something that you enjoy.
Yeah, and I think it's working, and I do feel that sense, like there is stuff. I always have this tendency to like explore a little, just only hint at certain like storytelling stuff and lore of the whole Captain D world. So I always leave a little something to explore for myself, and it gives me that feeling like, well, we could just like meet, the captain's dad one of these episodes or something, or see more of the space station, see more of the context of things. I give these little crumbs to myself to keep going and expanding.
Well, the last question is really something that touches on that. And it's a combo from Tom Videoger and Marco, both of whom they are joys to have in the Discord server. If you haven't checked it out, jump in and talk. Those are two guys who always have a very positive outlook and are good-humored, and it's a nice creative environment. But they combined for a question here about your kind of general happiness and well-being. They want to know something that has happened in the last month that just put the biggest smile on your face. And more generally, what do you enjoy the most about the whole creative life that you lead?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure I don't remember. The last few months are a blur because it's just been like toiling away on the one video. But certainly like releasing it and finally feeling like I'm free of this weird like purgatory of working on that. I'm sure that put a literal smile on my face at one point. I think like watching the premiere, I've also never done a premiere before because everything I make is so short. It's weird.
Oh, cool.
I feel like premieres are more fun when it's a little long form. So that was my first experience with that. And even though it was kind of chaotic, the whole chat like flies by, and it's what can you really communicate in that? I did enjoy this strange like these like one-word reactions are flying by during these reveals in the video, and that like I'm usually like a kind of a reserved person where I love comedy, I love humor, but I'm not going to be like the guy in the audience that laughs out loud. But that's like one of those things where I was kind of like having these spontaneous reactions sitting here like watching the reactions during the broadcast. So I guess as corny as it is, like something like that, like these days, just releasing a video and finally feeling validated that was actually good, and the parts I thought would make an impact. That was the last thing I experienced that was that put a little smile on my face. But I'll share a cat video with my girlfriend on the phone and stuff like that. Like this is what life is all about, right? Like just goofy animal videos and laughing uncontrollably at them, and also at your own pets. Yeah, the little things, the simple stuff.
I like it.
Well, this has been great. I really hope that we got to get some like high level executives listening to this podcast, because not every guest is a fit for this. But Captain Disillusion is such a great fit for somebody to just drive a Brinks truck full of cash up to his house to make content with a lot of resources and make those type of videos not take 7 months because you're doing it by yourself, but having like an army of little disillusioned underlings kind of, at your whim. That's what I dream for you and for me selfishly, so I could just see more of this more frequently in my eyeballs, because it's true. I think a lot of people, this will be like a closing monologue for some reason, rant. But I was thinking about this recently, that there are a lot of people who I feel are such natural fits for YouTube, for streaming, and they're great for that, and they're phenomenal at it, and that's great. I also at the same time feel like there are other people who make it work and do it very well, but if given the opportunity and the resources could really do things bigger and better. And I absolutely think, Alan, you're one of those people. I think it's obvious just watching your videos, how talented you are and how good that they are. And I complain, we were complaining with Joe Hansen a little bit last week about the state of kind of educational content on traditional media and even on these traditional media, quote unquote, streaming services, and how they could be better and how they could take, a page out of the book of YouTubers like yourself. And anybody who's listening who has those connections, let's hook that up, because I want 7 seasons. Maybe the seasons thing won't work in America the way it didn't in the Soviet Union, but 7 seasons of VFX School would be just all right with me.
Well, that's super, super kind of you to say. I really appreciate that. And yeah, that would be great. Guys, come on, let's get on it.
Let's do it. Until then, you can support him on Patreon. That's definitely helpful. So check out Captain Disillusion's Patreon. If you want to support this podcast, you can also go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. We're here every Wednesday night because Wednesday night is TCU night. And if you want to chat with us and chat with our guests, then you need to be a patron. So go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. This was a long one, could have been a lot longer. It was a pleasure having you and a long time coming. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we are out of here. See you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We'd like to extend a huge thank you and congratulations to the Tots and Dumpster crew who save tiny little lives every single month. A tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Trevsdead, Boromir, Bot Dogs, Chinchilla, Isaac, Conrad, James, Andrew, Jeff Davis, Patrick Pister, Baseweight, Monahim, Dojangles, and Zero. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry: Jen Mafasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Risebread, Sean Malone, Triple Question Mark, Ryan, Kamikaze, Maria, Marco Sheep, Tom Videogre, Jelksies, and Dan the Latch. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer Dan Yosua and producer-editor Ben Webster. Thanks to Baseweight for the use of Created in the Unknown that we use for an opening theme. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.